like most briefings that military folk give, there's a disclaimer. So up front, that's exactly what I've got to do, that everything you see and hear here are all my opinions, not the government's or the Department of Defense or the United States Air Force, either one. They're all mine. Got a couple of themes. What you're going to hear me talk about is two stories. One, obviously, is paying forward and how I did that, or continue to do that, I should say, in the safaris that have gone on with my family, and also in the various trips, business trips, with Air War. So, paying forward. Tripp is the author of the first portion, the first quote, and and all I'm really doing is taking that out internationally. Of course, Tripp got it from G. Harry Stein, and it's something that we all do, or in one shape or another, in conversation. And that's exactly what mine has been. Whether it was on safari or when I was on business, just interacting with whomever I was with. Invariably, as you get to know someone, you start talking about what are your hobbies. And here was an opportunity. The first one came as a consequence, really, of my wife. We were married in 1978. Went on a honeymoon in Europe, and we were talking about going to different places and seeing different things, and she said, "You know, I've always wanted to go to Africa. So sometime we've got to go to Africa." I said, "Okay, that sounds great." Then I went into the military a couple of years later and started seeing the world and realizing that your ideas about different places all over the world, you have this concept of what they are and what they might be. And when you get there, that expectation is not always met. It's a mixed bag. Some things are, but a lot of things aren't. And it becomes somewhat disappointing. So she would remind me that, we've got a plan to go there. I said, yeah, honey, I know, absolutely. But it's not going to be what you think it is. Whatever that is, it's not really going to be that. And then I said, what about all the shots? Because I'd take all these shots, and after 26 years in the Air Force, I just continued to reinforce my apprehension about going to Africa and the expectations you had, all the movies, etc., etc. I said, it's not going to be like that. It's not going to be like that. Yeah, I know, but I want us to go. I want to go. Okay, all right. So, 30 years later, after I've retired, I've been retired 2 years, she had mentioned it, and I said, okay, honey, let's do the research, because we always do that. So you know how much money we got, so maximize the trip, because we're only going to go one time. I was confident that we were only going to go once. So maximize this, do the best we can with what we've got, and we'll go. And then, and of course we started the shots and the whole routine, and I just knew that it's just not going to work. So off we went, and our trip was with Mikado. I've never heard of Mikado. I have since become more acquainted with them, and they're a pretty high-end safari. What's the right term? Outfitter. But of course I didn't know that at the time. And as you see here, that's Alfred next to my wife, and we're in Amboseli, Kenya, in western Kenya. So we show up. It's a long flight into Nairobi, and we're arriving late at night, and tired, worn out. And it's reinforcing everything that I thought on my trips. And we show up and come out, and I'm expecting somebody to have some sort of sign that says Houchin II or something that lets me know that we take that next step. And I'm already looking over to the side and realizing that my visa could have been purchased for an infinitely lot less money than what we paid to have our visas done, and all I had to do was show up. That's another one of the flotsam and jetsam of never having done something, and but I'm keeping this to myself. I'm not trying to spoil the trip already. So we go out, and I'm looking, and there's nothing. There's no sign. I'm going, this is great. Here we've got a 3-week tour, and already it's off to a wonderful start. Well, it turns out that our flight and the information had not gotten to Alfred in a timely fashion, and indeed the flight on the way over had changed its landing time. Alfred was right outside the door, but we didn't know that. So we go up and down the Nairobi airport trying to find someone that has a clue about Mikado. And we went to information, and sure enough they did. And we said, oh, yes, Alfred, he's just right outside the door. And sure enough, he was. And that began an incredible trip. It was just marvelous. The pictures don't do justice in any way, shape, or form. And you see from the Cape Buffalo to the elephants that were from me to you. If you ever go on safari, you really won't want to go to a zoo again. That's the downside. From then on, it's there's an old saying. You can once you've gone to Africa, you can leave Africa, but Africa never leaves you, and that's quite true. So every day, these are the pictures that I have on my screensaver. So every day I can go on safari. And this was the beginning. We went to Kenya, as I said, and to Tanzania, and went from Amboseli all the way around. And as I would talk to that's the Maasai down in the right-hand corner, you can see the one leopard that we only saw one leopard. We saw a kudzu of lions. I mean, and these are brothers, younger and older brothers, that were literally chasing each other in the Masai Mara. How to explain that? We're out in the bush with them and the older brothers, and well, that's a whole story just about them and them chasing each other across the range. But the people that we were with. So how did I pay for them? And I could tell you about safaris all day, but how does this get into paying for them? Here we are riding in an outfitter, open air, and of course you're going from one place to another, and people are asking me things, and I'm telling them, well, I enjoy flying model rockets as a hobby, really, and that led from one thing to the other about the ideas of how science, technology, engineering, math can be learned, and what a great educational tool this is, and how much fun it is to do the things that we do, that we take for granted, and the idea of it. So just like going on this safari, you want to do it over and over again. And so we exchanged cards and information and ideas, met teachers from all over the world on the safari, and they were interested in starting programs. So this began a dialogue. So when I got back to the Air War College, my colleague Chris Stamper, and you'll see him here in a minute, his parents had gone on safari with OAT, Overseas Adventure Tours. And we talked back and forth about my trip and Mikado and what we'd done. And I read an article the following year about the Navy War College. And they had gone to Uganda to their senior command and staff college to teach what they had been requested to teach, to help them as an outreach program. And I said, Chris, man, that sounds like a great deal. We had such a great time in Africa. What do you think the chances are of us doing something from the Air War College, giving them that Airpower piece? I don't know. Well, Chris had been the East Africa desk chair back in European Command, or UCOM. So he said, and when we created Africa Command, AFRICOM, he had helped do that. So he still had friends and associates back in the command. Called them up, sent them some emails, and said, hey, do you think anybody would be interested in having someone from the Air War College come over and assist with some sort of air power studies? And he said, well, let me check. Yeah. Sure enough, as it came down, because it didn't matter to us, it just, wherever. And they said, yeah, absolutely. Would love for you to go to Uganda and to follow in the wake of what the Naval College is doing. Yes, absolutely, that'll be fine. Love to do it. So off we went. Of course, Chris couldn't make it with us that trip. He had at the Air War College we've got regional and cultural studies trips every year for about two weeks. Our faculty and our students in various parts of the world, they go off to see them for those 2 weeks. And they've had a lot of academic preparation, getting prepared for them, and then they'll go off to the world. Our international students that we have will go see the United States. So we usually have anywhere between 45 and 54 international students, and they'll tour the U.S. Okay, why do I mention that? Well, Chris couldn't come with me on this tour, on this teaching event. So I had another colleague, Bert Franson, come with me. And what you're seeing here on the slide are two hosts, point of contacts. Both of them are the manuals. This one is a manual, Hazapura, who was the chief of the air cell there. And then in the photo down in the bottom, where you see us all standing outside the Senior Command Staff College, over to the left is Emmanuel Quinn-Ghani. You're going to see him again, because I didn't realize it at the time, but what they do is that he was the deputy, and the deputy becomes the senior, and it continues to rotate through. And you can see us all there inside the college and some of the students. But this was our first opportunity. So how did the paying forward come into play? As you can see, those are Art Applewhite cubits. And Art had done the U.S. flag as a cubit, and I thought, wow, wouldn't it be great if I could get him or have him or ask him if he would do that, to put the Ugandan flag on one of those, and I could take it with me. I mean, it's a simple, you know what it is, it's a simple paper, and they can print them out. And it'd be a way to introduce that in terms of a hobby while we were there. Plus, we could build them, we could set them up